In this video, I'm going to explain why most Pokemon cards won't be able to hold their price points within the market. Though before we get into this video, I'm gifting this Infernape illustration rare to one subscriber. Now, if I reply to your incredible comment with this alchemy emoji, then well done, this card is getting sent your way. Now, Pokemon cards are more popular than ever. However, the latest Black Bolt and White Flare cards are falling quicker than expected, though we kind of have to ask ourselves what's behind this. Though, you know, it's not just about Black Bolt and White Flare, right? Because a lot of the current Pokemon cards won't be able to hold their prices because the hype and momentum needs to last, and it seems like a lot of Pokemon cards will only be valuable for their specific time period. What I mean by this is if you think back to like Charizard VMAX from Darkness Ablaze, for its time period, it was a very iconic card, though when you fast forward to today, not so much. Like I feel with the current Pokemon TCG, it's just these constant hype movements, and I just have to be real for a second, the whole Black Bolt and White Flare hype I find a little bit strange. And the reason for that is because before all of this, okay, a lot of people shunned Generation 5. There was a small pocket of people who really thought it was an amazing generation, and they really thought the Gen 5 games were like the peak of Pokemon, but it was isolated to a small kind of niche group of people. I mean, on a real big scale, it was never considered a GOAT generation, so the fact that a Gen 5 set had even more hype than Pokemon 151 was a little bit strange. It felt like the community just all decided to jump on the Gen 5 bandwagon and they didn't have much natural connection to it. And I mean, guys, we've already seen this before. We saw this in 2023 with Japanese female trainer cards. And I mean, we even saw this with Journey Together with the whole, oh wow, trainer cards are back. I mean, I don't know. It just feels like there's a level of hype that's inauthentic at the moment. And the good news about that, it usually corrects pretty quickly. And that's why I want to go over some of the chase cards at the moment, talk about pricing, and talk about where I think the future of prices are going to go. All right, the first one that we need to speak about is the Seismitoad illustration rare from Black Bolt. Now, this one is wildly going up in price, and right now, I would be really cautious about purchasing this card. If you pull this card, dude, it is a good time to sell this card because it just seems so wild what's happening at the moment. Look at this. When this card released, the pre-release price was 63 US. This card in such a short amount of time has gone up to 234 US. That is pretty much hitting Magikarp illustration rare prices. Now, the reason why this card is hyped is because it is a Shinji Kanda artwork, who is the artist behind the Lost Origin Giratina, the Magikarp illustration rare, the Roaring Moon from Prismatic Evolutions, and a lot of other cards. Now, Shinji Kanda has a huge following, and of course, any kind of artwork that he produces, the whole fan base just goes nuts for it, and they all want to own some of these cards. One thing about this Seismitoad is because there's such a big library of illustration rares within Black Bolt, to get a specific illustration rare is very difficult, but still, I don't think it deserves that wild price point. But you know, $235 for a brand new card is banana prices, and I mean, it's Seismitoad, dude. I mean, sure, a little bit of an obscure Pokemon, I get it, some new energy here, but real talk, dude, I mean, come on, man. Like, I mean, this is wild, right? Now, the reason why we need to be careful when we see these prices is because it is a bit of a hype train that's building, and if you are new to the community, I can guarantee in 6 months or even 8 months time, I'm gonna look at this chart and you're gonna see that that Seismitoad has dropped like a pin. How do I know that? Because I've got other examples of Shinji Kanda artworks that have performed kind of similar, not as wild as this, but now the prices have all retraced. So here I'm on the Roaring Moon from Prismatic Evolutions. I'm gonna pull this into the year graph just so you can see, and you can probably see that snapshot right there, how the behavior is kind of similar and that new hype for a Shinji Kanda artwork. Now, mind you, I do think Roaring Moon is probably a bit more of a cooler Pokemon for like a mainstream widespread audience than Seismitoad. But to be honest, I actually do prefer Seismitoad because, you know, I love it when these cheeky little, you know, obscure Pokemon just like come out the gate. I do think that, you know, the community is looking for a new kind of cool Pokemon. So I get that it ticks those boxes of being something like a bit out of left field, but real talk, I mean, still the price is pretty high. Though you can see the Roaring Moon when it released, 173 US. You know, that's a real decent price point for a special illustration rare. Then by April of 2025, it shot up to $301, which is super expensive. And then of course, now it's gone down a fair bit, selling for $150 US. In fact, the Roaring Moon has hit a new low in the market. So like you can see there, that hype and momentum for Shinji Kanda that everyone loves, and I mean rightfully so because he is an amazing artist. But then again, when you see price points like that, you just do need to be a bit careful. And even when we look at the Magneton, the Surging Sparks, the Pokemon Center version, the Pokemon Center version went up to 68 US and then it dropped all the way to $35. And even right now, it's kind of trickling there, selling for 45 US at the moment, but you can see it did have that big momentum swing upwards and then it kind of came back down. And I do imagine Seismitoad right now is just going through a huge kind of shockwave of people just all wanting the card in their collection because it is a Shinji Kanda artwork. But one thing about Shinji Kanda, he does have a lot of collectors who enjoy getting all of his cards. Shinji Kanda has that status at the moment that people want to own binders of his artwork. Now, while speaking about these Pokemon cards, if you do love old and new Pokemon sets, this does bring me to today's video sponsor, which is Misprint. Misprint is a US-based platform where Pokemon fans can buy and sell cards at prices driven entirely by the community. That means listings just naturally stay up to date with what the market's currently doing, not just inflated store prices. One of my favorite aspects is that most listings have a buy now and sell now price. And if you're buying, you can put in a preset offer, and if the seller accepts, the deal happens automatically without any of the back and forth. Also, if you do download the Misprint app, it has an option to scan as many PSA slabs as you can fit in your photo, and the app will automatically detect the slabs and show you the current market prices. This is a great tool if you're at card shows because you always know the current market value of any Pokemon cards and it avoids you overpaying. If you want to check out Misprint, feel free to use my referral code and you can get $5 off your first purchase. You can find all the details in the video's description. A big thanks to Misprint for supporting the channel. Now let's get back into the video. So just here looking at the Black Bolt ETB, we can see it was selling for 220 US and now it's kind of gone down to 84 US. That's the base version, but you know, wild price drops, right? I mean, now Black Bolt Elite Trainer boxes are a little bit easier to get than they were before. And I imagine that Black Bolt will be a little bit more in demand than White Flare because you do have Seismitoad, you do have Zekrom, and you got, you know, the monochromatic card. And, you know, even though I don't know which one of Reshiram and Zekrom is more loved by the community, I have a feeling it might be Zekrom, but you know, we're just seeing how it's going at the moment as well. Same thing with the White Flare Elite Trainer box, selling for $199 at pre-release. Right now selling for 81 US. I have noticed that I've been able to spot White Flare and Black Bolt a little bit easier now than it was before, but you know, just last week I did notice it was a little bit easier to find them in the wild. And like I said, even though I really like Black Bolt and White Flare sets, I also feel that the hype for them is slightly more just what the community's all jumped on rather than like a real natural genuine hype. Because with the Black-White video games, I think time has been quite friendly to them because, you know, people have revisited them now and say, hey, they're such amazing games because they were the final kind of Pokemon video games that had sprite designs, and there is a bit of a fan base that really likes to hold on to that old kind of old school Pokemon vibe, but it's not on this massive kind of widespread scale. But here's the thing, and this is why I think a lot of Pokemon cards won't hold their price points for long periods of time. And the reason why is because we go through these like hype cycles, okay? And I spoke about the Japanese female trainer card hype of 2023 when, you know, everyone just started collecting Japanese female trainer cards, and it was a little bit inauthentic because it wasn't what most collectors naturally gravitated towards, okay? Same thing with the whole illustration rare hype, you know, earlier this year, or even Journey Together getting that insane hype for trainer Pokemon. It's not really an authentic fandom that's kind of building. It's just whatever the hype train's building, people jump on it. And that's why I do feel you need to kind of be careful, because I do speak about a lot of cards and we've had so many hype trains throughout the TCG and they just keep going up, down, up, down, up, down. I mean, even Drowsy from Scarlet and Violet base had a huge amount of hype for it, and then it also kind of trickled back down. Moving on to more of these, the Genesect Special Illustration Rare selling for $83 on pre-release, right now selling for $71. I do think this is one of the more interesting SIRs from Black Bolt, and I think the set is good, but then again, another thing we kind of need to talk about is how many sets are being released. We're just getting so many new sets coming into the TCG, and it's kind of hard, and I speak about it a lot, but it is so hard to define what a chase card is at the moment. It just kind of goes in these big sways in momentum, and I do feel it's going to get rarer and rarer to have the Moonbryon of a generation, or the Latias and Latios EX tag team card, or the Charizard base set card. I do feel we're kind of leaving that kind of era where we have one big trophy card for an era, and it's going to be all these like smaller sprinkled cards that kind of define an era. Even with Scarlet and Violet, if we kind of think of the main biggest chase card of the era, I mean, is it the Umbreon from Prismatic Evolutions? I mean, some people would say that's the biggest chase card. Some people would say it's the new Chinese Pikachu and Gengar card, okay? Some people would say it's Bubble Mew. You know, has it all become just about price points? Because to me, I don't think the Umbreon is the top chase card of the Scarlet and Violet era, not in terms of pricing. I'm just talking about in terms of like the general status of it. I just feel like that card exists at that price point because of Moonbryon, and literally if Moonbryon didn't exist, we wouldn't be seeing that price point for the Prismatic Evolutions Umbreon. You got so many people overpaying on sets at the moment. You know, if you do overpay, you know, to those huge amounts, you know, you're a banana. I always say that. I've been open with calling people bananas because, you know, you don't want to be overpaying that much for Pokemon cards. And like, I get it, the days of, you know, getting you like a booster box, or, you know, in Australia, we could get it for pretty cheap back in the day. Those days of getting cheap booster boxes, they're gone, okay? So you are going to have to pay a little bit over of what you normally would have to pay, but that still doesn't mean that you need to go even above that and beyond to, you know, get Pokemon products. You just need to be a little bit smart with how you kind of purchase things. Now, also, if you're wondering for a great resource for the Pokemon community, one of the best places is my channel's Discord server. We have over 9,500 active members, and you can get some of the quickest Pokemon TCG updates. The server invite is in the video's description. Now, the Kyurem SIR went from 115 US. I mean, that's dropped a fair bit to $62. You know, to me, it's kind of wild that I would have thought this would have been one of the big chase cards from Black Bolt, but no, it's become Seismitoad, which, you know, I kind of do prefer because I think it's a bit more interesting when you have Seismitoad running the generation than, of course, like a Zekrom and a Reshiram. Though we can see the Hilda illustration rare selling for 85 US. I really do like this SIR. Though moving on to some other cards that were super hyped, but they've kind of calmed down. One of them is the Pikachu special illustration rare. A real good snapshot we can get if we pull it into the year graph. And when we just look at that snapshot right there, you can see that Pikachu has really tumbled down. I think because there's so many cards that have just pulled collectors' attention to them, this card isn't really performing like, you know, a lot of people anticipated. Right now, this card is selling for $265. You know, to go from 480 US to 265, that is a significant crash. And I don't think a lot of these cards are going to hold their positions like previous generations because there's so much new cards releasing. And maybe that's Pokemon's strategy. Maybe Pokemon likes to have it that way because they can see how ridiculous some card prices go. So they're trying to just add all these new areas. And then when you have so many new cards coming in, you know, it does kind of spread the hype around a lot and it puts it in different kind of pockets. And then some cards that a lot of collectors wanted, like this Pikachu, eventually become more attainable, or at least a little bit more affordable than their previous price point. Another good one to look at is the Greninja special illustration rare. I'm going to pull this into the year graph. So this card was selling for $264 in October. It went all the way up to 410 US. Right now selling for 267. So you can see it went from, you know, 265 all the way to 410, and now it's back to its kind of October price point of 2024. I do think the Pikachu and Greninja are quite iconic for the Scarlet and Violet era, though, you know, that later half of the era really had a lot of chase cards enter, and it's kind of created this new level playing field where a lot of people want to own these chase cards, but then again, there's so much more to offer. I really can't wait to see what happens when the new Mega Evolution set releases and how that new era plays out for the TCG. Now, it's been pretty interesting because a lot of the Pokemon cards have been dropping and some have been rising, though with Black Bolt and White Flare, I have noticed that prices have been dropping, and I mean, it still is a great set, and I think time will be kind to it. And one of the reasons is because how much people now kind of do respect the Generation 5 video games, and as time has gone on, I kind of feel Generation 5 was one of the final times we saw that Pokemon video games had that unique magic. In fact, it's felt like over the last decade, Pokemon video games have gone from bad to worse, and it brings up the question, what happened to the magic of Pokemon video games? Well, I break it all down in this video here. Within this video on screen, I go over what made Pokemon games actually lose their magic. This is on my second channel called Philip's Trick Room. Feel free to check it out. I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you on the next video.